Hey everybody, welcome to our webinar today with DJI and SDG&E. Really excited to have you all joining us early this morning for Pacific time, or some of you later in the day, kind of over the ocean there. So thanks for hopping on. We'll go ahead and cover a few housekeeping items before we get into our session today. So without further ado here, today's webinar is just going to be about elevating utility operations overall with the team here at SDG&E. Talk about how their UAS program has come to be, what some of those use cases in action are, how they put some DJI drones into work in the field. A few notes for those attending: we will be sending out a recording after the session, so feel free to just check your email later today, tomorrow morning. After that finishes processing on the GoToWebinar side, you'll get a recording sent out to you. Throughout the webinar, you can hit the question icon to submit a question to our esteemed panel here, as well as answer any polls we have based on your questions as well. For those participating in the webinar, we will have a couple random swag giveaways as well. So we do have your emails from registering. So we'll be reaching out to a few folks afterwards as well for a few giveaways as a thank you for joining us today. But without further ado, a little bit unique here for the webinar today. I actually have the opportunity to be here at the SDG&E Aviation Services Department location with the team. While I'll be kind of rotating into the hot seat here for presentation side of the house. But throughout today, you'll get to hear from some of the experts here in the field. We have Brian Fleming. He is the UAS pilot and special operations lead here at the team. Started flying helicopters back in 2008. It's really a wealth of aviation knowledge there, and has been a SDG&E UAS pilot since 2016. And you think of drone years as dog years. There's really been a lot of progression since 2016 for those familiar with the field over the years. So really excited to hear about Brian's journey with the team there. We have Josh. He's the operations coordinator here for SDG&E. Once again, long aviation background there, starting in 2012 as a civilian helicopter pilot with thousands of hours of flight time there. So once again, focuses his time a lot on those detailed inspections, leading inspection crews, and keeping things running. Fred Farron here as well, kind of in the middle of your screen there, is a UAS operations support specialist for the team. A lot of good experience, whether it comes from the specific utility infrastructure, precision line pulling, thermography, or methane gas detection across a variety of use cases there. Started as a remote pilot back in 2013 and has worked with different utilities in the California region before kind of landing here with SDG&E side of the house. We have Chris Rook, Marquette. You can see the team's got a couple good nicknames there with a variety of Chris's we have joining us. So Rook's been in the commercial drone industry since 2017. Started as a consultant for SDG&E back in 2018 and has been full-time since 2022, developing a lot of maintenance-related standards, operating procedures for the team. Sorry, we had a short internet outage there, but looks like we are back online now. Thanks for flagging that, folks. Audio, thumbs up back there. So apologize for that there. It looks like we are all good to go there. So just finished introducing our panel here. Thanks, Daryl, Christoph, and Eduardo for giving us the thumbs up there as well. So we'll go ahead and hop back to the panel there with our first presenter from the SDG&E team. We have Brian hopping in here to give you a little bit of background on the Aviation Services Department from the manned and unmanned side.
Awesome. Hope everybody can see me and audio is working okay. I'd like to send a big shout out to Grant and his team and DJI for hosting us today. It's an awesome opportunity to get to share what we do on a daily basis with everybody and share our passion about utility aviation. So if you don't mind, we'll get started. There's really three pillars to San Diego Gas and Electric. It's our helicopter operations, which have been in operation since 2002, our flight operations base, which does a lot of our monitoring and tracking of our aerial assets, and got started in 2002, and then our unmanned aerial systems, which really got, no pun intended, off the ground in 2014. And that's kind of our claim to fame, is having the first drone in national airspace as far as a utility is considered. And we'll cover a little bit of this in more detail. So about our organizational structure, we are under the Wildfire and Climate Sciences, and then under that is Emergency Management, and then we are a separate group of Aviation Services. We are located at Gillespie Field in El Cajon, and we have two separate hangars, one strictly just for drone operations, or the unmanned side, and then one with all of our manned aircraft, and we'll cover that here shortly. So our flight operations base is really the hub of the SDG&E Aviation Services. They do a lot of coordination between all of our airborne assets, both helicopter and UAS. And then we work with a lot of external contractors as well. So any aircraft that comes into San Diego airspace working on a utility basis has to coordinate with our FOB or flight operations base. And their key components is air traffic deconfliction. So at any given time, we've seen in the past, we've had upwards of about 25 helicopters and 60 drones in just the small area of San Diego County, not including all the military air traffic, GA or general aircraft. And then, so a lot of that is just deconflicting our own internal assets, making sure that we're working where we should be. And then we have a lot of areas like county parks and sensitive customers, and so they help with that. The next one is safety management. Again, with our wide variety of areas that we're working in, we all wear a GPS unit, and that allows them to track our current location. The helicopters are set to about every 5 seconds. Our manned personnel are set to every 5 minutes. And so if we run into a safety scenario, we have a emergency button. We can press on that and we can expect some kind of support either by helicopter security or our own internal security or 911. The other is weather monitoring. Anybody that's not really familiar with San Diego County, we have a pretty adverse weather climate where it goes from the ocean all the way to snow into the desert within just a few hours. And that's mainly during summer months. We have a lot of pop-up convective or thunderstorm activity, and then they also let us know of adverse weather in our area. So it might not be something we're aware of in the areas we're working, but they will give us heads up, and they can send us either text messages on the GPS unit. We all carry internal radios, so there's plenty of lines of communication. And the other one is they coordinate with CAL FIRE. So SDG&E started a firefighting asset or department back in around 2017, and we can cover that a little bit more as far as the helicopters that we have dedicated to firefighting. But that was a unique endeavor that we took after we had some pretty big fires in 2003 and 2007, and we learned that we needed our own internal firefighting assets. So helicopter operations, we are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If somebody calls for a flight request, somebody will answer that phone call any time of the day. We also have a lot of external contractors that we rely on to do some of our work as well. But our key activities include aerial firefighting. So in that background, we have the Sikorsky S-60 Blackhawk. We also had a Sikorsky S-64 air crane and we're waiting delivery for the new Firehawk here shortly, which will be a part of our firefighting asset or crew. We also do line patrols in the helicopters. So anytime we have either high wind events, which is called PSPS or public safety power shutoff, every line that is going to be either deactivated or energized has to be aerial patrolled. We also have two 500 kV lines coming from Arizona into San Diego that once a month they have to be visually inspected. So our helicopters are quite equipped to do long patrols anywhere from San Diego to Yuma, Arizona and back. The other one is mapping. So we rely on LiDAR mapping to collect a lot of data throughout the county. And that's one use case that we're looking to expand with the drones here moving forward. The other is aerial construction. So anytime San Diego has a lot of remote areas that are inaccessible by road, so they'll call the helicopters in for aerial pole sets, wire poles, any type of construction that is not available by foot, the helicopters will exceed that. This is our current helicopter fleet. This is what our hangar looks like. So we have a few amazing helicopters that we rely on. SDG&E has a real high safety standard, so we rely on a twin engine helicopter platform. If you look at the photo on the bottom left, the very bottom helicopter is our Airbus H145. It's a 9-passenger twin engine, has a capability about lifting around 4,000 pounds, and does a lot of our smaller construction and also our hoist operations. The one above that is the Bell 412, and that's been a new addition in the last couple of years, capable of lifting about 6,000 pounds. So we're using that now for mainly construction, but also hoist operations. The one above that is the Sikorsky S60, dedicated strictly to firefighting, carries up to 800 pounds of water, and is available to the county of San Diego every day of the year. The one above that, which is recently departed, is the S64 air crane, and capable of lifting 23,500 pounds or 2,650 gallons of water. Each gallon of water weighs 8 pounds, so quite an amazing helicopter. A little historical background about our UAS department. It really, no pun intended, got off the ground in 2014. That drone that is in the photo right there is sitting in the Smithsonian, and it's pretty amazing to see that thing's transition from just coming up with a use case, and lucky enough that SDG&E has had the foresight to see that UAS or drones are probably going to have more of an impact on the status quo or our current use cases, maybe more than anything in the past 100 years. So they really saw that the drone was the future of aviation, and has dedicated a lot of time and money and effort into pursuing these use cases. So 2015 R&D continued, and we were operating. Anybody that's been in the field for quite a long time maybe remembers Section 333, very cost effective or time and costly to get allowed to fly. But we pursued that, got all the exemptions needed, and really built that use case out. In 2016 is when we really started to see the transition into operations or the growth of the UAS department, mainly with DJI products, including the Phantom and the Inspire. It really showed that this is a future endeavor that's worth taking. And so that brought us from 2017 to the present, which with the Part 107 rules and regulations that we're currently operating under right now, we have dedicated an entire team, probably have close to 50-ish drones that we operate throughout the day, and operate anywhere between the Mexican border all the way up to Riverside County. So we have about 4,300 miles or square miles of operations. A few big projects that we tackled back in 2019 was called DIRE, and we inspected pretty amazing numbers, 50,000 tier 3, which is our high fire threat district areas. So we have tier 2 and tier 3 is the higher fire threat areas, and we inspected over 50,000 in 2019. In 2020, we focused on inspections of transmission towers and completed around 15,000. And then also in 2021, inspected 20,000 tier 2 structures. So that project is an ongoing, constantly evolving project that we're hoping to take more on in-house, and it's a use case that we absolutely will move forward with in the future. And that's as far as the UAS historical background. I'm going to pass it off to Josh Young, and he'll cover the UAS team. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning. Yeah, so again, I'm Josh. Do a lot of our operations coordination here. Quickly going to introduce our UAS team. So Hector Ubinas and Christina Saro are essentially our leadership team here. I do our coordination, so day-to-day scheduling of our team. Brian is dedicated, for the most part, primary role is in RPIC here, as well as Fred, Adam, and Chris Jurgens. So we have essentially 4 primary RPICs here. Chris Hipwood, you will hear from him in a minute here. He does our UAS maintenance, and he also backfills as the second string RPIC. And then Chris Marquette, or Rook, he's third string RPIC, but he's our maintenance lead. So yeah, the breakdown, that's kind of 2 leadership, 1 here, and I'm pretty much mostly in the office, ops coordination, 4 RPICs, and 2 maintenance. So our UAS department, some of our roles and responsibilities here. So really it's that we manage all UAS flights being conducted on the behalf of SDG&E. We're not staffed here to necessarily scale up to a massive project or endeavor. When we need, say, 50,000 poles done, the department needing that work will actually contract that. And in that scenario, they will abide by our operations manuals, which are developed here in-house, and our safety standards, and then we will go out in the field and conduct field visits or safety observations on those teams. Our team does the more sustained, here internal, does more sustained projects. If we have ongoing or want to develop a new use case, constantly we have departments coming to us asking, hey, could you do this with a drone? So we do a lot of that development. Yeah, so we have here aircraft. We'll get into that in a little bit, but 30-some aircraft in our fleet. And then again, our internal team. So again, that's developing standards, doing safety checks, flight operations here internal, flight coordination, maintenance on our own aircraft, use case development, as well as training. And for training, that'll be Fred. I'll be back with you in a minute.
Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Right now, we're going to talk about training, how SDG&E handles UAS training. So first of all, I know there's going to be some questions about how to get in, how to get your foot in the door. We can address that later on after the presentation. But for starters, the number one thing you need to do, and what we require all our pilots to do, is obtain their FAA Part 107 license, right? In order to fly commercially, you have to have that license under your belt. Now, what we do for those employees or contractors, typically SDG&E employees who are interested in utilizing an aircraft, UAS aircraft, for their day-to-day, they can come to us and we can get them prepared to take their 107, right? And we walk them through with all the training materials that the FAA provides, as well as provide them with practical use cases, actually like what you would actually encounter in the field. As soon as they're comfortable to take the test, they'll go ahead and schedule that, and once they let us know that they have completed it, then we'll move on to the next phase. The next phase is ground school training, right? So it's a few hours. It'll usually take a day, but this is where we kind of do a deep dive in regards to if it's a specific project like DIRE or RIDI. So DIRE is called Drone Inspection and Repair, Assessment and Repair. RIDI is a risk-informed drone inspection. So if it's a specialized project like that, each project has a special, operating procedure that you have to abide by, rules and regulations. We kind of outline everything from what the standoff distance is for the aircraft, best practices, how to deal with and de-escalate customers that may be a little bit sensitive to drone operations in the area. And I'm assuming we're also going to have some veteran drone operators here on this webinar. So you guys know exactly what I'm talking about when you get to a property and there's a customer that's upset. Maybe they didn't receive the notification. And coming back to that access protocol, we have a fairly robust access protocol system here at SDG&E where an entire department is dedicated to customer notifications, contacting agencies that are responsible for notifying, the areas that have sensitive habitat, or areas that we need permission to fly. So the pilots are educated in every one of those categories. Main concern is safety, right? Not only the safety of the crew members, but safety of the customers. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, whether it's a ground crew or a SUAS crew that's out there in the field. You get Murphy's Law that is involved. And the Aviation Operations Manual is kind of like that standardization, and it teaches, every crew member that's involved in the UAS department or as an employee or a contractor, how to deal with certain situations. What's the next step? If there was a hazard or a risk, how is the pilot, crew member, visual observer expected to document that information? Each utility, each company has their own standards. We've developed ours to maximize safety and to ensure that all parties involved in an inspection, in a survey, know what to do if there's an emergency. We outline standoff distances, as I mentioned, discuss FPI, fire potential index. Obviously, we're in California. A lot of wildfires happen, very devastating situations, within the last year. There's this thing that we have where every time we go out in the field, and there's little tips and tricks that aren't, that you learn when you're doing this like 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, making sure that you, when you're on a one-way access road with a box canyon with dry vegetation coming up both sides of you, it's like you have to have an escape plan. And, we train our pilots to kind of think of that stuff in advance. We want you to get home safe. Everyone has families, friends, coworkers, and, that are all concerned for the crews that are out in the field. After we go through a very thorough ground school training, we jump to the next step, which is the familiarization flights. Essentially, that's going to be 3 days worth of practical training with the aircraft. So depending on the employee or the contractor, whatever their role is, whether you're flying a Mavic, M300, M350, or any other aircraft, based on the mission or project that you're working on, we'll take that aircraft out, we'll go into the field, and we start from the bare bone basics. Even if it's, some of the more experienced pilots, there may be new firmware that the manufacturer has uploaded. So we're just making sure that everyone goes through the checklist, right? So SD card's in, the airframe is solid, the props are good, SD card is in, firmware is up to date, right? We make sure that every pilot knows how to manipulate the camera sensor, if that's what you're using, how to access, RTH settings, obstacle avoidance settings. We show them how to put a battery in, show them how to charge it. All of that goes into day one, right? And if time permits, then we're gonna start with some basic maneuvers. Day two is gonna be basic maneuvers, preparation for the check flight, as well as some of the more advanced maneuvers, right? So someone that has never flown a drone before, we're going to take them and kind of hold their hand like, a child who is, learning how to write and read, those baby steps, even for the advanced guys. We want to make sure that everyone has, number one, safety as their main priority. Number two, they're comfortable with the aircraft, because if you're not comfortable with the aircraft, if you're not comfortable with basic flight maneuvers, you're not able to go out in the field until you've kind of passed the check flight. So we'll do, start off with box patterns. ascending, descending, checking MOCA. MOCA is important. All the droners out there know what MOCA is, minimum obstacle clearance altitude. So you zero your gimbal, get the crosshairs on the top of that object, and then add whatever the safe clearance would be above that. So let's say a tree is at 100 feet, you get your MOCA off of that. 100, let's add 10 to 20 feet above that tree. Your clearance altitude that's going to be safe to pass over is going to be about 110, 120 feet. It's going to be up to the pilot. So little tips and tricks, making sure that they know how to use RTH, what's going to happen when RTH is activated if they get a disconnect. Not every aircraft is perfect. Again, Mother Nature, Murphy's Law will always ensue. So each pilot is expected to also be able to fly in attitude mode, or basically when the drone loses GPS and it acts like a helium balloon, they practice all those maneuvers. Day 3, again, it's kind of reviewing the fundamentals, making sure that they're familiar with the AOM, with the flight following, knowing that they have to do their tailboard, and we're monitoring all that, setting their Track Plus message. So Track Plus, again, is that GPS device that Brian spoke of earlier. It's how we monitor all our pilots and deconflict with the manned aircraft that also have the similar device. Making sure that they're hitting their SIN, their launch message, the land message, and their ops complete. And that final check flight we're looking for that, because we're not trying to grill and try to fail everyone. We want everyone to be successful. So I know at SDG&E, those of you who have flown with us in the past know how strict we are, and it's because it's safety, and we want to grill that, right? A lot of pilots get very confident in their skill set. That's great, because then it allows you to maneuver the aircraft in these tiny little spots. You're going to come down between trees, close quarters to lines, while maintaining standoff distance. But there are pilots that become overconfident, and that when their ego grows, you start missing steps and start letting things slip by, right? So then you become complacent. And the big thing that we focus on is making sure you don't become complacent. So once we've observed that a pilot has met all those standards, all those needs, checkboard, flight briefing, crew resources, they're utilizing their VO and assigning other crew members. We do their eval, we grade them, we provide feedback if there was anything they needed to work on, and then they'll get the thumbs up and be able to fly on our assets, or whether it's inspections or mapping, surveying, all of that. So once contractors or employees have been flying, we have annual evaluations. Basically, it's just a feeler to make sure that you guys still remember all the rules and regulations. Everything from documenting flight logs, and you remember how to report risks. You're making sure that you have all your fire equipment and know what to do if you have a flyaway. Hopefully that never happens. So annual evaluations, and each pilot working for SDG&E is also expected to have at least a minimum of 20 minutes every 90 days of flight, right? So some employees are like managers or inspectors that, or they'll come out and they're not always out in the field, but they'll have to spot check a few assets. Those are the ones that we will also monitor through the software, Rook, which he'll be on shortly. He's in charge of kind of making sure that everyone's kind of up to date when he receives that notification in the software. And as far as proficiency flights involve every single mission that we have, right, including new use cases that we haven't deployed yet. But let's say, for example, for PSPS, our proficiency flights will typically have 2 crew members. We have the pilot and either the inspector or a sensor operator. So at any given moment, we'll get a request to do a PSPS patrol. And when we do these proficiency flights, it's a simulation, right? So Josh will go and do his ops coordination. We'll pick a circuit. He'll pick a circuit that we need to fly and inspect as if it was a real thing. He'll put in the flight request. He'll create the flight order, which shows us all the assets that are focused for that particular mission. And then he'll, contact access protocol. Access protocol in conjunction is going through and looking for sensitive areas, contacting customers with the DNATE system that notifies everyone that's in that area of operations. And we'll run through the gamut of missions. So PSPS, we'll run through that. We'll have our pilot fly, identify the circuit that we're going to be flying. We'll have the sensor operator. Usually it's an inspector that has the second controller when we're using an M300 or an M30. We'll discuss that a little bit later as well. And we'll fly it as if we're doing a real PSPS. We do that for every one of our missions. Detailed inspections for wildfire mitigation. Each utility has their own shot sheet. We have our own. So we'll do our context shots, our close-up shots with the cross arms, looking at every single component, cotter keys, insulators, looking for cracks, looking for any damage on the conductors, looking for tracking, splitting. San Diego is prone to termites, so even during proficiency flights, we may find something that could be addressed as a preventive maintenance type of item. So everything from PSPS, line pulling, detailed inspections, mapping, we do all that. And we're going to talk about some of our fleet. We're going to have one of our three Chris's come up and discuss it. Rook, if you can please talk to us about the DJI aircraft that we have.
Morning all. Chris Marquette, affectionately known as Rook around here. Nobody can tell me if that means that I'm a rookie or the most valuable piece on a chessboard. You make that decision, I suppose. So yeah, I am part of the maintenance department. I'm considered the lead, I guess just because I've been here the longest. But in actuality, all of us kind of fill in and help each other out in the field and also in the maintenance department as well. So, but I take care of most of the administrative and schedule and doing the admin stuff of that. Sorry, I hit the button by accident. Our fleet mostly consists of DJI. Brian mentioned earlier that we have about 50-ish drones. About 38 of them are DJI. We're lucky to have that. We enjoy flying the DJI drones. We think they're the most reliable and we trust them the most. All the way from the 300 down to a Nevada. Our workhorses are the 300s. We use those the most for general inspections. It can carry just about any sensor. We also utilize that one for line pulling at the moment. It's the most reliable and useful and valuable for us right now. We just acquired a fly cart. Still working through the admin red tape for that one as well. We have yet to fly it on an actual mission, but it's ready to go when the paperwork finally does go through. Matrice 30. Good mix between the Mavic 3 and the DJI and the Matrice 300. It's a little more portable, great for hiking up some of those hills that we have in our district. And then, of course, the very useful and common Mavic 3, very portable. We use it a lot during those DIAR and RIDI projects that the other guys spoke about over the last few years. Been a great asset for us. Avata 2 has its specific use case as well. Using that for under bridge gas line inspections is one thing, but also the departments in our company have been finding us very useful for using us for cinematic type missions and doing outreach, marketing and outreach for the company. So that's been good. We do have one DJI dock that we have acquired and is currently being installed. It is my responsibility this year to get that installed and coordinate that to start making use cases for the DJI dock. Payloads, H20, H30T, pretty useful and valuable gimbal. We use that on the M300 and we have an L2 LiDAR. A couple of our districts are using LiDAR for developing our chargers for vehicle charging at sites. So we have a program where we install, SDG&E installs vehicle chargers at minimal cost to the customer, and they use LiDAR to determine where our power assets are relative to where the chargers will be installed. U10 is a methane gas sensor, maybe a lesser known payload to some of you, but we're developing use case for that all last year, and it's gone through several iterations, firmware updates in the last few months, and we are still actively using that. The gas side of SDG&E is finding that very useful. Multispectral, little bit lesser of one of our use cases right now, but we do use a multispectral drone once in a while, especially on our vegetation side, and monitoring regrowth of our decommissioned roads, etc. ZenMuse P1, a very powerful camera for mapping, great for monitoring.
Wing in there.
Check this. Alrighty. There we go. Back to you.
All right, back with you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we have a lot of jurisdictions here to coordinate with. Not only, as you know, do drones need to apply by aircraft and FAA regulations, but also all the jurisdictions. We have a lot of military bases here in San Diego to constantly coordinate with that we do have power lines on their properties, state parks, you name it. So as the drone, we need to coordinate the ground as well as the aerial side of things. And each of those jurisdictions kind of have their own nuanced approaches. So that's a big piece of it. I'm going to try to keep some of these acronyms simple here. There's a lot of them within utilities. So I'll try to kind of streamline what we're talking about here. So OHVI is overhead visual inspections. There's quite a few types of these we have here. And the different names are based on either what triggered it. Is it just an upcoming scheduled routine maintenance, or was there some sort of a fault on the pole? So what triggered it, and essentially what program it's under. So that includes the DIRE, drone inspection assessment repair, and RIDI programs as well. So those are essentially all versions of detailed inspection. I would say that's the largest use case across the company for UAS at this point, looking very in-depth, high resolution. The P1 has been fantastic for that with those very high resolution images for these overall inspections. These would then go to a qualified electrical worker or a lineman that would review that imagery, and they would make the final determination. We're just the drone pilot. We're not going to say what's going on a pole. We'll point things out if we notice something that doesn't look quite right to us. At this point, we've got a pretty good eye for what things should look like, but that final decision comes from that qualified electrical worker. Undetermined outages. So this is a great use case for the zoom of the M30 or of the H20T or H30T. Essentially, if they've had any sort of a fault on the line or equipment, there are sensors all over the network, and if they sense any sort of disturbance on the line, they'll send us out there to get very detailed imagery of that. That heavy zoom on that really allows that with those zoom capable aircraft, and the ability with both those aircraft to have the dual RC. Some of these, the qualified electrical worker will be in the field with us with that second RC, and they can operate that camera themselves as we fly the aircraft, or they can instruct us to get the detail that they need, looking down to minute cotter key level for any sort of tracking or discharge. PSPS patrols, again here, public safety power shutoffs before we have these red flag weather events. Areas, essentially, if the wind is going to exceed during those high fire conditions, the rating of that particular area line, that is based on a lot of things. The height, the clearances from the structures, the age of the equipment, the terrain. Essentially, if it's going to exceed that, though, it must be de-energized at that point. So we need to patrol all those areas prior to de-energization, and then before we turn the power back on. Just make sure trees haven't fallen across the lines, nobody's working on them, lines haven't come down in that wind event before we can turn it back on. See, there are a couple hands. Are we waiting to the end for that?
Yeah, good to keep it rolling here. So
okay, yep. I have a question section at the end. Mapping in general, yes. We have a lot of engineers in office that need the data. Depending on what works best for them, LiDAR or ortho, we're happy to provide that for them. TCM is our transmission construction maintenance department. They have a lot of use cases. Environmental has actually been a very large business unit that we support here. We have lots of environmental mitigation programs that come along with building power lines on public lands, and a lot of times we'll have to exchange credits to do environmental work in other areas where maybe there isn't even power lines. So environmental is huge for us. Power Your Drive was already mentioned, putting in electric vehicle chargers, and for engineers to be able to do that planning work. Automated substation thermal mapping. Yes, thermal's great, helps us identify issues before they become issues, overheating components within substations or just any equipment in general. Precision line pulling, we will touch more on that here in a little bit. We have some slides dedicated to just that, so I'll move beyond that for now. The methane detection, CH4, as Fred discussed, we can fly under bridges or in areas for our gas department, not just electric here, gas as well, and areas where they need to either do routine inspections or they have a possible leak in some areas. Marker ball inspections, up on the top right there. We have those marker balls are roughly 6 to 8 feet in diameter. Anytime spans of line are more than 300 feet above the ground, they install these aerial hazard markers, and they help helicopters identify those lines. And internal media and PR is a large one for us as well. Lots of different departments doing neat new things, green energy things, green building ordinances, and a lot of departments that want to showcase that to the public. So we end up flying a decent amount of media and PR type stuff. And then a little less common would be our emergency incident response, so wildfire events, a broken gas line, anything that's a battery yard, anything that's going to have a prolonged response. We can give live support with live streaming, that we can give that information back to our emergency operations center so they can make up-to-date decisions. And we have a little more information on that coming as well. Security, we can get encampments around substations or transmission lines or areas that the construction needs to be done, so we will support them as well, identifying the hazards in the area before they go in to clear some of the encampments. Again, live streaming really great in incident response. It also allows us to have the QEW back in the office, or qualified electrical worker or manager, so that they can not have to spend the time to go to the field. They can get a lot more done in a day, productivity. Thermal and IR we touched on, very valuable for us. Corona inspections, especially with the higher KV towers, dirty insulators and such can induce corona disturbances, which we can pick up and identify with the drone. Multispectral has been valuable for our environmental department and something we are digging more into. Definitely a lot of potential use cases there. Vegetation fuels, essentially thinning the vegetation around power poles, especially those that have equipment on them like fuses or transformers. So in the event there was an ignition, it's thinned to the point where the fire can't easily hop from grass to a bush to a tree, that there are essentially fire breaks. So that's a large program as well. A lot of vegetation trimming. Post-fire assessments and post-storm assessments. Yep, helping get eyes on what's out there and what needs repaired. And to retouch on the live stream operations, yes, we use DJI Flight Hub 2 for that, as well as Air Data. That allows us to beam the information back to either emergency operations or the party that's requesting that inspection. We will do that either over 4G LTE or through Starlink, and that's very, very beneficial for us and something we get requested all the time. We use that for our public safety power shutoffs, the PSPS patrol, so that inspector can be in the office clearing sections. On PSPS, a lot of times when we have an entire town-wide area, it'll make sense to use the helicopter in that area. But a lot of the areas where a lot of it could be truck patrolled, but we have certain small stretches that are crossing canyons or up over a mountain where a patroller can't get on foot and you don't want to bring the helicopter over there. That seems to be the best use case for the drone at this point. We're getting more and more adoption on that every year. This last January, we had many requests for UAS there, especially up in our northeast district up towards Escondido. Lots of UAS flights this last January when we had a lot of red flag weather here. Fault patrols as well, that qualified electrical worker can be in the office, giving them that eyes on for security as well, same idea. Emergency incident support, and again, this allows the person that needs the data to be in the office, accomplishing other tasks and to still give eyes on, and they can give us feedback for what they want to see more of. The low latency of this is great, and instantaneous feedback, and it's enhanced operational safety. If we need to hike in to get access to a location, we can do that ourselves, and others don't have to make that drive in that truck. All right, and Brian on the line pulling. Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll cover precision line pulling. This has been a use case that we started back in 2016, believe it or not, with just I think it was a Phantom 2 or 3 with a little dropping mechanism on it. But we instantly showed the use case and how efficient it is. And we've developed this over the last couple of years to include the M300, now the M350, and possibly even maybe the flight card at some point to fly in heavier lines. So a little background on our line pulling operations or missions. If it is quite a long span, the QEWs or the linemen would have looking like a shotgun looking device with a spool on the end of it. It was called a Lucky Line Launcher, and depending on elevation and brush or distance, or maybe how much that person had to drink the night prior, they could be far off from their intended target. So they would have to reel that back in, try it again, and you're having to either go hike it in by hand or use a helicopter. So a lot of this is what Josh and everybody else was talking about. We have a lot of environmentally sensitive areas here in San Diego, and the fact that we do not have to disturb a lot of that area and can just fly the drone directly overhead carrying that line saves both our departments and our environmental side a ton of time and hassle. So we'll cover this a little bit more, and I think we have a short video to show.
Yep, I'll go ahead and play the
Perfect
video.
Copy, good speed, good heading, wind 6.7, batteries 82. Coming up on 300 feet of pool, wind speed 17, speed at 2.5, battery 77. Good speed, 2 miles an hour, wind speed 15, battery 75, good to go.
They got eyes? Got eyes.
RC7. Just let me tell you what. You're good to touch forward at that altitude. Intentionally getting snagged on this? Yep. Alright guys, we're coming your way. The wind speed's already up to 10. Yeah, we're going straight into it. Alright, I'll keep it here for 1 more. Just let me tell you what. I do have a better line of sight of the line. I can take control whenever you yeah, if I'm losing depth perception, so go for it. And Johnny's on the ground. Alright, motors are stopped. And go.
Gotcha.
There we go.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, so you can see as that's a little bit of a highlight reel of what we do with our line pulling, and it's a use case that's just constantly evolving. So hopefully with the flight card and bigger aircraft, we'll be able to pull the same type wire or line that the helicopters do. And that's just something that is a long-term use case, and it instantly is a more efficient and cost-saving than our current method. So yeah, it's something that we constantly are growing, and one of the most exciting use cases that we have coming up in the future. The next slide will be covered by Fred. Thank you guys for all your.
I'll get this back on
Okay.
the PowerPoint view for you. There you go.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Detailed inspections and aircraft-specific missions. If you guys are able to see this chart, you'll see the breakdown of what each aircraft is mainly utilized for. As discussed earlier, our M300, M350 platforms are the most versatile aircraft that we have in our fleet. From PSPS, wildfire mitigation, those detailed inspections, fault patrols. And for those who aren't familiar with the fault patrols, those are basically like undetermined outages or early fault detection. So if our sensors detect any anomalies in the system, then a troubleman will go out there and, look for what the issue is. Sometimes, the troubleman isn't able to find something because it was, a helium balloon that wrapped itself around, the conductors. There was an outage. Customers are angry that they have no power. So these guys are going out there middle of the night trying to diagnose it. They get there, the balloon's gone somehow, or very odd instances where a hawk may accidentally drop its prey onto the conductors, and it causes a temporary short. But we're looking for those things. There's telltale signs that you are very difficult to see from the ground. So, these ground crews will go and do their assessment from below. And, they're using binoculars, to glass the conductors or the components. But it's very difficult sometimes to get the angle above. So they would have to get a bucket truck. Sometimes if you can't get a bucket truck because a customer's not home because it's a gated community, or the ground is wet, and we're not allowed to drive there and rut up their access road. The best next thing is getting an aircraft up there. Line pulling, thank you, Brian, for that great presentation. Line pulling is a huge thing for us, especially for the M300. Again, I don't know what we would do without that M300 back in the days with the Phantom, but the M300 and its dual operations capability just unfolded a whole nother realm in line pull capability for us. Siege-4 gas detection, again, we do the difficult areas under the bridges. So in San Diego, and I'm sure in most other utilities, the gas line's going to have to eventually cross, an area that has like some sort of canyon or waterway. So that was initially our main focus, and the gas department began utilizing our detection sensor to do patrols of the transmission lines over canyons where there's difficult terrain. So the foot patroller is very limited by their RMLD device, which is basically a handheld version of what we have on the drone. So it's a laser-based gas detection sensor, and those have a limited range. So with the aircraft being able to get in these adverse areas, vegetation, steep canyons, drop-offs, we're keeping our patrollers safe. LiDAR and mapping, Chip's going to talk about this later on, but with the advent of the L1 and L2 and now the power line follow feature, I mean, it is such a valuable asset. Yeah, maybe it's not a Regal or anything, it's a smaller payload, but it gives us a very quick and broad LiDAR scan. If we need like survey grade quality, we'll use that other sensor, but the L2 has been a very, very valuable workhorse for us, especially with the power year drive that Rook and Josh talked about earlier. And as far as IR goes, a couple of us are IR certified. We've gone through the training, and DJI has actually developed a very, very good analysis suite. So you can do everything from add your humidity numbers, your environmental conditions like the temperature, the distance that the aircraft was from the asset, right? So everything that you need to input into a handheld device that our thermographers use, you're able to input that information, right? Because as of right now, I don't know of any drone-mounted IR system that mimics a handheld device where you have to input humidity, emissivity, all these factors that go into dialing in the image. So it's, what this IR does with the H30 and the H20Ts and the M30s, even the Mavic Thermal, it's capturing a raw image, right? And you take that raw image, and it's like you're putting it in Lightroom or Photoshop, right? You're going in and you're fine tuning based on the settings. So that's what you're doing with the DJI's Thermal Studio Suite. It's like you're taking that raw data, that raw image, and then you're bringing it into the software. You're inputting the variables that you couldn't because the drone can't have a humidity sensor on there, right? And it's not going to tell you the exact ambient temperature or what the emissivity of insulator is going to be. It's a very powerful tool. We use that all the time. And you'll see as the missions trickle down the line, Mavic 3 Pro and the multispectral, it doesn't look like they have a lot of use out there. Those aircraft probably have as many hours, or actually almost more than our M300 doing like the line pulls, right? Because they're doing all these detailed inspections. We do thousands of inspections, throughout the year. And the small aircraft, whether it's the Mavic 3 Enterprise, the Mavic 3 Pro, those are logging in a ton of hours on these distribution assets as we collect all this data for our intelligent imaging processing system. Josh will probably talk about that a little bit more later, but what IIP is our data repository. Everything kind of funnels into that. It's an AI machine learning system that we use, especially those who are familiar with the DIRE or READY project. All that information kind of funnels into IIP. Josh will touch base on that a little bit more. Advanced dual operator mode and handoff. So we use these features religiously. Thank you, DJI, for really dedicating a lot of time, engineering, and software development for this. It makes it very simple for us to do what we do, for whether it's line pulling, PSPS, fault patrols. It's a valuable asset that I think every manufacturer should have. It's a must-have tool. What exactly is dual operator mode? So dual operator mode isn't necessarily a new feature in the drone cinema industry, because actually in cinematography, you'd have a sensor operator and the pilot, right? It's a known feature, but the way has been developed for enterprise, it's amazing. You can be not tech savvy and you'll be able to use this feature. So dual ops allows two pilots to operate a single aircraft using two remote controllers. So you have remote controller A and remote controller B, right? Pilot 1 will control the aircraft, and pilot 2 can control the gimbal sensor, which is amazing, right? Other systems may not allow you to switch roles. So what is the handoff feature? The handoff feature allows two pilots the ability to seamlessly switch back and forth, right, between the aircraft control or gimbal operation. So I can have aircraft control, and I can tell Chip, hey, go ahead, you take control. He hits a button on the controller or on the screen, he'll take control, and we verify. So we have this communication standard where we'll say, like, for during a line pull, it's 1,000-foot span. We're gonna fly halfway, so 500 feet. I'll tell Chip, hey Chip, go ahead and take control. He'll verify. Okay, he'll hit his button. He'll say, I have control. I'll verify with him. You have control, and he'll continue the mission. This has been the single most needed feature for everything we do, especially line pull. The pilots can be stationed next to each other. One can be, at a completely different span, and this helps with efficiency as far as like the ability to leapfrog, right? So we don't have to wait for to fly the drone out to one pole, from one pole to the other pole, and then fly it back and then relocate. We can fly the drone to another pole, land it there with the other pilot. Pilot one can relocate to the third span and then fly it from there. And that's how we do our line pull operations, right? The dual operator mode is also fantastic because it gives us telemetry reads. When we're doing line pull, we're constantly looking at battery. We're looking at our distance from home. We're looking at wind speed, right? Wind speed is kind of our indicator of how much tension or how much strain the aircraft and the airframe is undergoing. We don't want to burn out ESCs. We don't want to damage, the carbon fiber arm or the mounts, stress the propellers. So we have these limits, right? So if the wind speeds and gusts are around 20 miles an hour, we're going to call it. It has to be 20 miles an hour or less wind speed. So, and as far as like what we're monitoring, we're kind of, you'll see the wind speed meter on the aircraft toggle. You'll see it like at 5 miles an hour wind speed or 20 miles an hour wind speed on the aircraft. And that kind of gives us our angle of attack judgment, right? So you can't see the aircraft from the side, but that gives us an idea of how much strain the aircraft has. So we'll back off the sticks, we'll slow down a little bit. We'll have our spooler, the guy who's handling the actual line reel, which are 1,000-foot spools. They'll increase or release tension, right? Sometimes we have to add tension to get the line above like a tree, and then we'll relax the line again and let that sag down. The benefits of this dual operation, enhanced safety and situational awareness, right? The pilot can focus on the aircraft if we're in tight quarters and we have a dedicated sensor operator to do their job and get really good data. Enhanced visual line of sight. We can fly a little bit further because we have folks that are at the furthest distance from where the aircraft launched from. Field operations efficiency, sorry about that. We can leapfrog from pole to pole instead of having to wait for the aircraft to come back, land, and relocate. And just overall mission diversity, from cinematic video shoots to PSPS patrols or fault patrols where we have a qualified electrical worker looking at the screen, and they have the choice to look at the screen and just look at the screen or actually manipulate the camera sensor. But I think that if you have not utilized these features, it's definitely something that your teams should start investing some time in. The dual operation specific missions, M300 and M30T, those are the two aircraft that we use because those are the ones you compare to our C pluses to. PSPS, fault patrol, precision line pull, gas detection, and security and incident support. So security, we'll get our security officers like on the other screen. Usually they don't want to touch the camera, even though we can lock out the aircraft flight controls, which is another nice safety feature that has been added by DJI. On to Chip, talking about some of our autonomous mapping.
Hey everybody, thanks for spending some of your time with us today, listening to us talk about drones. My name's Chip. I help out as backup pilot, do some GIS work / processing, just kind of a little bit of a fireman to, whatever little fire is going on, I'm going to try and help out here internally, as well as supporting Rook on the maintenance side of the house. But one of the main areas of focus in my background is in doing autonomous mission mapping, typically RGB or regular visual spectrum mapping, as well as LiDAR. Have done some other sensors as well, such as multispectral, the methane gas detection, and some oddball ones, magnetometer, acoustic sensors, but bread and butter has been the RGB and LiDAR mapping. So one of the big areas that we have a use case for is in the orthophoto or RGB mapping. As has been mentioned, the environmental side of our house has been a very strong user of this data. They requested a lot. Actually, just last week, we mapped 1,000 acres of a large property that we're doing a lot of native habitat restoration. So we're working on getting that all processed for them. And then there are other areas that we're tracking for them as well. Some of the use cases that I've got listed here is that we've got some facility yards where the facility supervisor wants just to sort of a monthly recap of what their yard is looking like. Maybe there's an active construction project going on in one corner of their yard, so it's giving them that progress so that they can, I guess, report to their superiors what the progress is looking like or how everything is going on their site, as well as monitoring. I mean, they have a lot of large equipment that's out there, poles, transformers, things like that. So it helps them monitor inventory to a degree, and just gives them that eye in the sky view of their yard. Just a nice way to get an extra perspective on their facility. Going back to the environmental monitoring, that's a really big thing here, especially in Southern California. We've either got invasive species that we're trying to eradicate or keep under control, as well as we're trying to bring back native habitat. So there's a lot of areas in our power lines where we have what's called an easement. So if you've got a big transmission line, those really big towers, the land that's under there, we're in a lot of cases responsible for. One, making sure vegetation doesn't get too close to the power lines and providing, that sort of fuel or increased chance of a fire. Vegetation management in general is a really big part of the sort of work that we have to do. That basically have been chopped up a bit, and we've been reseeding with native habitat, and it's going to take a while for the land to sort of reclaim it and make it natural. And we have to prove to our to whoever owns that land, be it the state or county, that that the work is progressing. So using the drone to essentially document that progress over the years, that's sort of an annual task for us with our environmental group. So it's another area where they use us a lot. And then also, our contractors provide a lot of work for our engineers, a lot of deliverables. So in that bottom right photo there, that's sort of a planimetric drawing. And that's essentially just taking that photo, turning it into a product that the engineers will use, typically CAD, Civ 3D, things like that, where they'll be tracing out, it could be the edges of a building, where vegetation is, where the roads are, where the curbs are, things like that. All the stuff that engineers need to either get an accurate model of what they got, and to be able to start planning improvements or changes to the property. And then moving into our next slide here, LiDAR is it's been a really big thing in our industry. I mean, LiDAR just in general is a growth industry across many areas. So using the drone to be able to fly it and use it from an aerial perspective is a really powerful tool. As was mentioned, we've got a lot of electric vehicle charging station installations that are going on in parking lots all over the county. And so San Diego Gas and Electric is involved in some aspect of that. I believe in like the permitting and some of the design, making sure that the engineers are keeping everything to a proper specification. Vegetation management also is a big use case, basically making sure that vegetation is not too close to the power lines. There are mandated distances, and I would have to double check. I believe it's 3 or 4 feet for distribution lines, and then going up to a much larger distance for transmission lines. What's great about using the LiDAR for this is that the traditional method is somebody on the ground with a handheld laser sort of pointing it at the vegetation, pointing it at the power line, and doing some math to get that distance. There is a bit of a judgment call that ends up happening from those ground-based operators, and they may not always get it right. They're very good at their job. They usually do get it right, I'm sure. However, we did have a case recently where 2 different people inspected the same spot. One said it was within specification. The other said, no, your vegetation's too close. And so you now had 2 people with conflicting opinions. So we sent the drone out, did it, and we were able to provide that objective sort of 3D data set that now we provide a raw data set. They can measure as many different ways or angles or points as they want. Plus, it's now documented in a way that other people could come and see rather than relying on the word of somebody who went out in the field. So that's the great part about just being able to collect data is it's a more objective source of data that you can come back to where other people can now interact with and get it for themselves, get that information for themselves. LiDAR's real big power is being able to see through vegetation to a degree. Obviously it doesn't see through the actual matter, but all those little gaps in the foliage and leaves and things like that, some of those lasers are going to potentially hit ground or hit the trunk of the tree. It gives you a much better idea of what's going on potentially underneath vegetation than just a regular visual camera where you just really, once you've got that tree there, that's all you're seeing. So providing that 3D data, as well as being able to see through vegetation a bit and really being able to build that 3D model that you can remove vegetation and just see that sort of bare earth. It's very helpful for a lot of engineers and groups like that to just see what the raw land is doing. Also, environmental side where water is going to flow. So water departments and things like that want to see maybe where erosion's going on. So there's just so many uses on LiDAR. Haven't even touched much of it right here. For power line specific though, something a lot of people didn't know, I didn't know until I started working with electric utilities years ago, was the amount of sag in the power line has a specification. If there's too much sag, it causes problems that those lines could slap together in high wind situations. If the lines are too tight, now they're pulling on the power poles too much, and over time that could cause issues as well. So just the amount of sag that goes on is a consideration to make for the engineers when they're inspecting these lines. So it's almost like we're doing like an engineer level inspection sometimes with this data. Our contractor crews also regularly use LiDAR for power line modeling, doing as-builts, supporting new construction, or just getting models of old power lines that were collected 20, 30 years ago. The data is to that standard and just bringing it up to date to the current data standards. But also planning routes for undergrounding lines, especially in the back mountains with high winds, high fire threat. There are some lines that are now getting put underground so that we don't have to shut off power during high wind events, but also reduce the risk of fire occurring because it's all going to be underground. And then some of the other sensors that don't get used as much, as has been mentioned, multispectral is a current push from our environmental side. That's definitely going to be a multi-year process because a lot of the multispectral is geared towards agriculture versus our goals in environmental is more about identifying species, either invasive species or identifying native species and what is the health of those plants, especially on the native species, to make sure that they're thriving and doing well. And then also just being able to count it out. There are some areas where our biologists currently will go out and in person will count out how many plants there are. A lot of our properties can be smaller, so on an easement, maybe it's 100 feet wide, so you're just counting stuff that's inside that strip. That's really what we're responsible for. But then on some of the bigger properties, that could be quite an endeavor, having some people out there just counting plants. So if we can figure out a way to do it through multispectral, the environmental department loves it. They don't view it as you're replacing our people in the field. They're like, now those people can spend time monitoring more things or doing other things. It's really helping enable other people to be more efficient. So it's less taking their work, and it's more allowing them to do more work in the same amount of time. The other thing that was mentioned was methane gas detection. I just bring it up here because it is flown very similar to a mapping sensor. You get that sort of lawnmower pattern in the sky because the laser has a very tight footprint. It is not like a LiDAR where it's shooting in a wide beam or basically shooting a ton of lasers in a wide beam. It's almost like a handheld laser pointer, and you're just running it along the ground in very narrow passes because the actual laser has to interact with methane to then give you a reading. So you fly it very similar, and sort of in that bottom right corner, that's just an example of the sort of flight path, but as well as you can see the little place marks there, those are possible detections by the sensor of a gas leak or detecting methane. And so often once we get those, we're then taking over manually, maybe at the end, going in and trying to tease out more closely, like essentially it provides that early alarm, and then we're going to go in manually and see if we can't get that pinpointed even better there or get some repeat hits, because sometimes there is a potential for false positives. All right, and moving into the next slide, going back to fleet maintenance, we've got Rook back on deck, and thank you for your time.
Hey, everybody, I'm back. In the interest of time and some questions that need to be answered, I'm sure I'll try to keep this short. But as you can tell, we do fly a lot. Like most utility companies, we are hard on our equipment. Line pulling does require us to max out the payloads specifications of our aircraft. So naturally, over the last couple years, we really ramped up the maintenance documentation and making sure our books are straight and become more professional and more of a safer program overall. Just going to talk briefly. We keep track of our flight hours, issues with our aircraft, any kind of trending problems using air data. It's a very common, very well-known piece of online software. They make it easy for us to upload flight logs and share with anybody that needs to see it or to go back and review any issues that might be occurring with our aircraft. We keep track of the airframe hours. We use some typical manned aircraft mnemonics and abbreviations, FMC, NMC, which is fully mission capable, not mission capable. We keep it kind of simple. If there's a problem with an aircraft, we mark it NMC, and it gets taken out of the rotation for an unknown until things are worked out. We also keep track of our assignments, where the aircraft are at across the county, using a QR code system through air data. Pilot hours and currency are also tracked through that. We have a 60-day policy. If you haven't flown in 60 days, then you need to come and fly with us before you can go out on a mission once again. So we keep close tabs on that. Document expiration, these are obviously very important too. We want to maintain our certificates and aircraft registrations, all tracked, and we get alerts through that same software. Pretty easy stuff to use. Again, one last clarification: work we've done on airframes, who did it, what, when, and all that stuff. Functional test flights are performed before the aircraft goes back out on a real mission, and it gets signed off by the tech who did the work itself, much like a manned aircraft system would do theirs. Battery maintenance and storage, very important. We have a ton of batteries in this building, and they all need some attention. We make sure that they're not overly charged or overly discharged, obviously. Very important with LiPo batteries, as everybody has found out over the last few years with incidents here and there. Drone in the box, not much to talk about here, so again, I'll keep it short. We have one. We're going to have it installed this year. We're hoping to develop use cases for it. We're excited about it. It's just slow going, and that's okay. We walk and we crawl, walk, and then run in this program, and we have been since 2014. Any questions about that, you can ask later.
Yeah, and Rook, maybe a quick one on maintenance before we got here, but they're curious about the QR code through air data. Can you actively display all your equipment on a map or see where it's at? How do you use that inventory side?
The QR code feature from air data is still in active development. We were one of the early adopters for that, and it does not allow for live location, so to speak. If a drone is crashed or found by somebody who does not own the drone, they can scan it with their phone, and it pings and sends us the lat long of where that code was scanned. So if we need to locate our drone and somebody has found it, that helps us locate where that is. But otherwise, it's just for accountability of who has what at the moment. All right.
Hey everybody, Chris coming back, or Chip, for just to talk briefly about our future use cases, and yeah, just trying to keep it short in the interest of time. We all love talking drones, so you get us going, we'll talk all day. So on drone in a box, one thing I would mention, we're just kind of going slow now because we're waiting on some paperwork, but we did recently get our waiver to operate one with a VO on site. So the pilot off site, VO on site. We're currently pending to get our true BV loss, where the operator is off site and essentially the drone has a limited flight envelope where it's shielded and allowed to fly without a VO on site. So we're waiting on that to really expand everything as well. Our big push right now for the future that we're kind of crawling with right now is going into over 55-pound UAS operations under a 44807. The two big areas that we see this doing is, one is supporting our construction and environmental crews. We have a picture there that I think it was a pretty decent Photoshop job by Rook. Is the vegetation bundle on the left there. And you can see in the bottom middle that there's somebody hauling that out. So currently there are poles where we have crews hike up there because there is no road next to it. They have to hike there with all their tools. They got to chop down the vegetation. They got to bundle it up and they got to hike it out. There are cases where a helicopter might get used to help bring those tools there or to bring things out as well. All very cost prohibitive and risky. You got people with the increased risk of slips, trips, and falls, snakes, all kinds of things. And plus you're lugging all this stuff through rougher terrain. Actually, what that person's hiking through is not that bad. There's much worse poles to hike to that we have in our territory. So having the UAS or bringing a fly cart, usually there is a road nearby within few hundred feet, 1,000 feet, and just having that fly cart do that work for us. And the same thing with supporting construction. Some of these poles, people are hiking in cross arms, insulators, hardware, and tools. Just having the UAS do it. And again, either not having to use a helicopter, or people can just focus on walking in safely without lugging a bunch of gear while they're doing it. The other big area that we're pushing for is to do ag spraying and seeding. We say ag, even though it's not really, I think, technically agriculture, because what we're doing is we're either trying to spray to eliminate invasive species or spraying or seeding to promote native species. So it's a little bit different. We would be using the same type of drone, but as far as when we do it and the types of chemicals and things that we would do are separate. And that is working very closely with our environmental group, who currently does that work using the traditional methods. Somebody with a backpack sprayer, sometimes they have a truck come in and do the spray. And given the size of our easements and other things, a manned aircraft coming in and doing the spray just might have too large of a spray pattern. Plus, it's very costly when you're just spot spraying a couple small spots in a few areas. So having the UAS sort of bridge that gap is a lot of potential there. This is like decades worth of work there. Another big push that we're doing is to be able to provide higher grade LiDAR products. So whether that's coordinating more with surveyors, as well as processors and engineers, or people that take the LiDAR and classify it to the standard that is needed for engineering. We're looking at potentially like a Regal type system to enhance what we can offer with the L2. And then obviously in the far future, everybody knows beyond visual line of sight. There we have patrols that our helicopter does where it's 50, 60, 70 miles. Next 10, 20 years, who knows? It's hard to assign a date, but at some point, we all know a UAS is going to be doing those types of work. And some people already are in limited areas. Yeah, so moving into the last slide here. All right, Grant, gonna hand it back to you, I think.
Yeah, big thank you to the SDG&E team here. We're going to go ahead and hop into a few questions here. We've had Rook kind of monitoring the questions here, and he'll be able to continue to answer some from the SDG&E side here. But some of the ones we had come up kind of before the webinar and during, I think could perhaps start off maybe with Josh here. But you talked about maybe some cases where there's some risk for pilots out in the field. You guys have a very robust notification system, but in an incident where an aircraft was shot at or something similar, that'll go to Brian here.
Sorry.
How would you all handle that, or what's kind of some processes in place there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's something that we deal with quite a bit, and we have a pretty diverse group or range of areas that we're operating in, from very rural to very urban. So what we have seen is that in the past, we've had about 7 drones that have been shot at or shot down over the years. We work pretty closely with our local FBI, DEA, police departments, and a part of that is just trying to document everything that we possibly can. And then we also notify our own internal corporate security. Once we have notified them, cleared the area, we retreat back to somewhere safe. They end up tackling that or handling the rest of it. But as of right now, it is a threat that we currently face throughout the year. But that GPS unit, and when it comes to tracking our location, having that emergency button, is a literal lifesaver when it comes to areas that have very limited cell phone reception or limited radio communication. So yeah, great question. But as of right now, we're waiting for one of the events to actually get prosecuted to set a standard. But as of right now, there is no such case. So, but great question.
Yeah, thanks very much. And another one here was, when you guys do have these larger projects, you mentioned contracting out some of that work, and how would companies be able to express interest, bid, or get involved when you do have those type of inspection projects come up?
Yeah, great question. So when a business unit needs a large amount of inspections to be completed, such as asset management, they're a common one that requests that, like the Dyer and Riddy program, where they have 50,000 poles needing inspected. If they have found vendors, they can bring them to the table, but we also have an approved vendor list. Each new vendor goes through essentially an audit process of their manuals, SOPs, etc., and then we will put them on a list. And when that bid comes to us, we can send it out to those business units. We at Aviation Services have a few RFPs, requests for proposals, that go out. We do have a call when needed contract, essentially when we have extended duration events and we could use a little support. We have a couple local vendors in town that can help us out backfill. But really getting on that approved vendor list is a good place to start.
Awesome. And then looks like we'll have time for one more live here, but just kind of talking about how you guys have built out a data analysis pipeline for all the images that you get in at the end of the day. What does that look like, or what maybe software or processes are you using?
Yeah, of course. So we decided to build, SDG&E decided to build an internal data repository called IIP, Intelligent Image Processing, maybe 3 years ago or so. It is AWS hosted, has an uploader module. You can manually assign to each structure, or you can just batch dump a ton of photos in there and it'll auto assign to the nearest structure. It's central repository, company-wide. Anybody within the company can request and gain access to that. Not only does it have imagery and all the historical imagery ever acquired there for every structure, but all of the LiDAR data is in there as well. They can use a quick POTRI viewer to be able to view the LiDAR, or if they have the tools to handle it themselves, they can download that LiDAR file. Currently, there's 91 AI models running in there, 36 are asset detection, so it can detect, hey, this is a porcelain disconnect, and it can inventory that on the pole. A lot of the older structures, that were built in the 60s, not good documentation on that, so this helps identify exactly where every type of that component is. 36 asset detections, 45 damage detections, so it can look for things like missing cotter key, cracked insulator, and it will flag those automatically. And then there's 10 different SIP model, which is your communication infrastructure providers that can identify what's connected to the pole as far as AT&T fiber, stuff like that goes out there. There is currently over 4 million images in there and over 371 miles of LiDAR in IIP.
Wow, very cool. Awesome. Cool. Once again, a big thank you to the SDG&E team. Thank you all for joining us today as well. We're going to have to go ahead and follow up on some of these questions after the webinar here with hitting time here. But once again, thank you for joining us and hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.